Hello, my ghouls and girls. Welcome to Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. I'm Ryan,
I'm Nathan.
and this is normally the podcast where we talk about two movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before I get into anything at all, we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/drive-in double feature podcast. Just a fun little area between Nathan and myself where we share some fun conversations, just giving some extra content to you supporters out there as a thank you. If you choose to support us, it's only $5 a month. But if not, do not worry. It doesn't affect any regular content whatsoever. But continuing our theme, Nathan, I'm hitting the channel changer button from the Twilight Zone to Tales from the Crypt.
Oh no, I don't have premium channels.
Don't worry. It's apparently it's not on any streaming platform for whatever reason.
That's insane.
It's only on YouTube.
Okay, all right. I mean, yeah, that's how I watched it.
It is bizarre. I didn't really look into it, but because I mean, this was originally an HBO show back in the day.
That's what I would expect it to be on is HBO Max, but I wonder if they just don't have the rights to it anymore or something.
Maybe not, but just to give you a bit of backstory, Tales from the Crypt is originally a comic book series, and this is just kind of taking stories from that comic book series and adapting them. But it's a lot more than just Tales from the Crypt. There are other Tales from the Crypt is just kind of like this big broad term, and a lot of these stories are taken from other horror comics and just put them together. So it's under just one umbrella, but it is much different than a Twilight Zone. Still has those fun little twists in there, but at the same time, it's very much a late 80s, early 90s, like blood and guts. And since it's on HBO, you can show nudity and you can swear a lot. In some of these episodes. So it's very, very different from Twilight Zone.
Yes, it is very different. A lot more tongue in cheek. Not all of the episodes, but some of them are a lot more tongue in cheek. I guess, Ryan, what's your experience with Tales from the Crypt?
Didn't have a whole lot of experience beforehand. And even now, I haven't seen a ton of episodes. I think I've seen all of the first season because I had it on DVD. And the first season's only like 6 episodes.
Oh, wow.
Too. So I have seen most of the first season, but beyond that, it was like going into dark waters here, and I hadn't seen either of these episodes that we're about to talk about. And but I can say, like you said, it's a lot more tongue in cheek, and the twist. Like I said, Twilight Zone is more of like those real like thinkers, like, like, oh my God, like you just blew my mind type of thing. And this one, it's kind of like, like a punchline type of thing. It's just like, it's just the ending to a big gag. And usually what it is, it's usually somebody that's of a nefarious nature that's getting their just desserts, usually for Tales from the Crypt. So,
yeah.
But do you have any experience with this at all?
Yeah. I've never seen any of these episodes, but it's funny that we bring the Twilight Zone up and this, and brings up my grandma. Me and my grandma watched a few episodes of this together. I remember that she's actually she's a fan of Tales from the Crypt. I
can't watch. I could imagine watching this with any of my grandparents.
I was really young too. I don't know. We watched it together. We had fun. But that's about it. Otherwise, I probably haven't seen most episodes, so it was fun getting into this.
Yeah, there's another episode I remember very well. It's it's like one based off like the Three Little Pigs, and it's all animated, and it's them just. It's a bloodier version of that, but it's done in like cartoon violence style. So
that's fun.
It's a lot more ridiculous, but I will say that the biggest difference from Tales from the Crypt and Twilight Zone is, Twilight Zone was kind of all like Rod Serling's type of mind going in, and he wrote a lot of the screenplays for those, and usually he'd get like a TV director or something like that. Tales from the Crypt actually takes very well-known directors and puts them in like very like huge A-list blockbuster names.
Each of these had like people that I pointed out and I wrote down and stuff like that. It's more high profile than I realized.
And I mean, there's other notable directors, which I mean, I'm not going to mention the 3 just yet that we're going to talk about, but other directors like I know Arnold Schwarzenegger directed a couple episodes, Richard Donner, Walter Hill, and that just there's so many that you're just like, huh, they directed an episode, or it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I agree. It was fun to watch these and see who was in these and who made these.
It's like I said, getting into those big names. I mentioned one, and this one is actually a returning director, and this episode is directed by Walter Hill. It is the episode "Cutting Cards."
Yep.
And Walter Hill, like I said, directed The Warriors, probably my favorite movie ever. And he's back directing episodes from Tales from the Crypt. Just to give you a brief synopsis, it's these two gamblers that have this very long, bitter feud between them. And for whatever reason, they do not like each other. It's not revealed why. They kind of hint to some past escapades, but it's never explicitly revealed like why they don't like each other so much.
Yeah, these men just hate each other in the worst possible way. They wish the worst on each other.
And the two main characters are played by Lance Hendrickson and Kevin Tighe, and they both, in my opinion, give stellar performances in this one. Like,
they play it so well, because this is the prime example, one of the prime examples of tongue in cheek. This one is so silly, so goofy, and they play it so well. Like, it's silly, but you still get that like feeling of hatred for each other so well out of it.
Yeah, they start. So what they kind of decide is Vegas is not big enough for the two of them, so that one of them's got to get the hell out of town, and they're going to start playing games to kind of decide at first what they're going to do, and one of them never ever is like the clear winner, and it's always like this trading of power back and forth, and it's one usually squirms, the other one kind of gloats, and they just go back and forth between them.
Yeah, and I love some of the lines. Like, one of my favorites is I think Lance Henriksen says, "You need a doctor because your brain has gone to shit."
Oh yeah,
great stuff.
There's so many good lines in here, and there's other ones later which I'll get into, but there's one scene I really like is so they start playing cards, and they don't really get like a clear winner out of that, and Lance Hendrickson is just like, forget it, like let's play some real stakes here. Like, I don't want to see you get out of town. I don't want you to even be here anymore. Let's play Russian roulette. Like, these guys hate each other so much that they're willing to just play Russian roulette with each other.
And they play it out in the parking lot in front of the casino.
Out in the open, just like anybody could walk by and just see two maniacs with their gun pointed at their head, trading it back and forth.
Yeah, and it's so good. It's like the comedic version of the scene from Deer Hunter. Like, they're just back and forth, and they have the gun to their head. And, Lance Henriksen will have it to his head, and the other guy will be talking, and Lance is just like, hold up, you're distracting me. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure I win this one. He's got the gun to his head, ready to go.
Oh yeah, and like I said, it'll be like this. Like, Lance Hendrickson will pull the gun, and it'll click. So he's like, "All right, do it. You got a 25% chance of this hitting your skull." And and the other guy's just kind of like, like just like breathing so heavily, and then afterwards, and he just like this huge smiles on his face, like, I gotcha. But the funniest part is at the when they're trying to get towards the end of the game, some random guy like pulls in the parking lot, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, get out of the way! I'm trying to park my car." And then they're just like, they point the gun. I was like, "Get the hell out of here!" He's like, "Oh, whoa, sorry."
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, because he asks him to park his car, and I think the line that he says is, "Park it yourself, asshole."
I do, because I like it, because that's like the one time they agree with each other, because the guy pulls in, and Lance Henderson's like, "Get out of here," and then the other guy, Kevin Tighe, says, "It's like, yeah, you heard my friend. Get out of here."
Yeah, he calls him his friend. This parking lot is just for us to play Russian roulette.
This is the Russian roulette parking lot. Can't you see? And that the one part I will reveal. So it's down. There's only 2 chambers left, and Kevin Ty is like, he's got a 50-50 chance, and he survives.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're pretty much just like, okay, well, if Lance Hendrickson's gonna pull this trigger again, he's gonna get shot.
Mm-hmm.
And Lance Hendricks, like, I mean, it's literally a 100% lose situation.
Yeah.
And Lance Henderson, he prides himself on his luck, so he's just like, I can beat it. I can beat these odds. and, and sure enough, it turned out to be a dud. So
yeah. So you know what that means? They have to decide to play a different type of game, chop poker, as they call it.
So but it was kind of revealed, I guess, that like Kevin Ty knew it was a dud.
Yeah, because it was in the rain or whatever.
Right. He's like, maybe they got wet. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like they go to play chop poker. So instead of using chips, they're playing for fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And this scene is so crazy. Like it just, so they're playing for fingers instead of chips. So anytime they lose a hand, they have to lose a different body. They have to lose a finger.
Yeah.
And we lose at first, and he's like, all right. And like when he's about to get his hand chopped, one of his fingers chopped, like, all right, just be real careful. It's like, don't worry, I got a clear shot. And then just chops off a finger.
And the effects on this are pretty good. There is like power to that. It's the meat cleaver slams down and it chops off their finger, and it's brutal.
One thing I will say though, I thought was, I mean, it doesn't matter by the end of the episode, but so Kevin Ty, I mean, he gets his his ring finger and his pinky finger chopped off because he loses 2 hands in a row, but then finally he wins.
Yeah.
And Lance Hendrickson gets his index finger. I'm like that'd be like one of the last fingers I would choose.
Yeah, because they get to pick their own finger that gets chopped off, and he's like, "Yeah, index finger. Why? You got at least keep these. Keep the thumb. Keep the finger."
If you're gonna keep 2 fingers on your hand, that's at least those.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess, are we going to give away the full ending?
I think so. I mean, like Twilight Zone, this is already like a 30-year-old episode, so there's more than enough time. But it's revealed that they kept playing this game so long that by the end that they are now in a mental hospital, and they no longer have any arms or legs.
They're just nubs, and they're playing checkers with their noses.
They still hate each other's guts and everything, but they're forced to live together now. And it's funny at the end because Lance Hendrickson is choosing some gum, and Kevin Ty is like, all right, now give over the gum.
It's a funny ending. This is just a funny episode. I don't know, like it's if there was a good episode to pick for Tales from the Crypt to at least like give off like the jokey nature, this is a perfect pick for that.
It's very entertaining, and it's a very breezy episode. I actually watched it twice.
Oh wow!
Leading up to this, just because it was like, let me get a refresher before the podcast starts, and it's a definitely easy watch. 2 stellar performances, I gotta say, like I said, from both of the main actors, and Lance Hendrickson actually will be making a return, so we get to talk about him more. But
hey. Sounds good to me.
But it's a good episode nonetheless. Next one is also another big powerhouse actor. It's the episode Split Personality, and it stars Joe Pesci.
Yeah, Joe Pesci. I forgot because I've seen clips of this episode. I think it's like one of the most popular episodes.
This one actually is. There's like a big meme now with this episode.
Yeah, exactly. The line what go ahead.
Well, it's what the is this shit?
Yeah,
this is HBO. This is not TV. It's HBO. But
wow. But yeah, Joe Pesci is in this, and Joe Pesci is great in this. What I like about this one, it's almost like 2 different stories put together.
Yeah, well, because originally it's revealed Joe Pesci is like a big con artist, and we get another huge cameo in the beginning of this episode with Burt Young.
Yeah, I was like, oh, so Burt Young's only in the first 5 minutes. They got him, and he's not in the rest of this.
Yeah, like Joe Pesci had a big scam going on within the casino, and he scammed Burt Young out of a bunch of money. So
yeah,
but Joe Pesci's character is always obsessed with things in twos.
Yeah, that's his lucky number.
Everything comes in twos. He loves the number 2 so much, and he said his one goal is I always want to make it a pair of twins. And
oh my, the scene where he's talking about like, oh, I saw Parent Trap.
Oh god, that was nasty.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it was like seeing a dream on screen. It was this that made me laugh out loud. That was the silly.
No, he's like, but he says a much more vulgar.
Yes,
line.
He says a very vulgar line. It's funny.
But Joe Pesci gives again like another crazy performance in this one. I mean, to be fair, I don't think the female leads are that good, but
no, I tried to see if they did much of anything else, and neither of them really did. And it makes sense, but they're real twins, like you do what you got to do, because that's the thing, is they're twins.
And but Joe Pesci gives like a crazy performance. It's just very comedic, a very Joe Pesci type of role.
Yeah, he's really going all in on this one.
But his car breaks down on the side of the road, and he wanders in, and the meme that everyone always says, it's when he's looking at this like house that just looks like Barbie's house, pretty much. It's just all pink and these big crazy shapes, and runs into a pair of twins, and he's like, oh my god, jackpot. And he starts falling in love with them. Well, he starts trying to get them to fall in love with him.
Yes,
and he does end up sleeping with them individually, and he finds out that they're worth $2 billion.
But to get all of their money, he has to somehow marry both.
And it's funny because the funniest part of this episode, I thought, was him narrating the story, because it's one of the funniest scenes. Like, I laughed so hard. He's in a hotel room, and there's a hooker that he's with, a prostitute, and he's telling her this story, and she's like, can I leave? Like, are we gonna do anything? And he's just like, shut the up.
Yeah, that felt like a Joe Pesci ad lib. Like, he was like, I'm gonna just yell, because he gets in her face and is like, shut up.
You'll be whatever I tell you to be.
It's great. Really quickly before we go any further, I do want to say this one's directed by Joel Silver, who the only thing he's ever directed, but he's a huge producer. If you don't know him, Nice Guy, Sherlock Holmes, The Matrix, Die Hard, a ton of movies. So, and did you notice the cinematographer on this one?
I did, Jan de Bont.
Yeah, a returning cinematographer to the show.
Yeah, Mr. Twister himself.
Yes.
But again, another huge name just in this random one-off episode.
Yeah.
And so he realizes he wants to be with these twins, and he's like, how am I going to get it? I've got both of them, but there's only one of me. And then he's like, what could do this? Two of me.
Yeah, so he like gets this plot where he's like, I have a twin brother that lives in South Africa, and one of us has to be in South Africa for a month, and we got to swap. So he plays like this other guy who's like, oh god, how would you even explain it? I love seeing Joe Pesci in this role, though.
I wanted more scenes of him as this character, because Joe Pesci, he's like the typical wise guy, like as his regular persona, and he's got like the whole Goodfellas thing going on. But then he's like, oh yeah, my brother Victor, he's a much more crass individual. He's not as well spoken as I am, and he says he's a bigger like California type, and he uses like a lot of California lingo. So
he's like, you're a couple radical babes.
So, but Joe Pesci shows up, and it's just him using the same voice, and he just starts acting like he's from California. He's like, oh my God, I just see these two bodacious looking babes.
Yeah,
And
I love it. He dances around. He's like, I'm too
I'm too
sexy.
sexy for my shirt. I'm too sexy for Milan.
It's great, and I think you can tell Joe Pesci is having a blast in this episode, and I love it. Like it's fun.
It's so good. I mean, he ends up marrying both of the twins because he's like, because that's the other thing too. Like he's been with these twins for months, and he's just like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about my twin brother, and just, and, but he ends up marrying each twin as one of the brothers type of persona, and he thinks everything's all well and good, and then eventually he ends up getting a little sunburn on his back, and the girls are able to figure it out because they apparently their father had died. It's never explicitly revealed how he died in the beginning, and the girls are even kind of alluding to something in the beginning, like, can we go back to a normal life? Can we deal with everything we've been through? And turns out the girls had murdered their own father because they didn't want to share him between them, and they don't want to do the same to Joe Pesci either. And spoiler, they tie him to a bed, they split him up from the bottom up.
Yeah, from the bottom up, and then they both get a half of Joe Pesci, and it's a gross like final reveal. I mean, a very fake Joe Pesci body, but the blood covered sheets where half of his body is laying.
The thing that I thought was weird though, I mean, because obviously they're showing like the body for the camera purposes for the audience, but the woman is laying on the opposite end, so they're just looking at his insides. Yeah. And I'm like, wouldn't they want to rather look at his face instead of like all that viscera and
yeah, right? Like, oh, we split Joe Pesci to see his insides. Another weird thing is he's telling the story. Is this all in his imagination?
Well, no, he was telling the story up to the part that he realized he needed a twin.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's why he was like halfway falling asleep, and then he was like, "Oh, aha, gotcha." Okay, I thought it was just a weird storytelling angle.
No, he was narrating up until that point, and then he's like, because he was telling the prostitute all about that story.
Gotcha. Okay.
And yeah, he ends up dying, and that's how it ends. He got split right in half, and the girls are completely content with having a 50% of a body.
Hey, whatever, they can't. You gotta get what you get.
If you could split Joe Pesci in half, would you take the left or the right half?
I think the right side's the good side of Joe Pesci.
Oh, see, I would have said the left, so we'd be
perfect.
Fine. We could split it.
We should start sharing Twix bars now. I think it would be a very easy split. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But that does it for that one, I think. But again, very, very solid one. Highly entertaining. The next one is honestly probably like the biggest curveball out of the bunch.
Yeah, you picked like 2 comedy episodes, and then Yellow is not a comedy episode.
You could have made a movie out of this one because and this one is called Yellow. It is directed by Robert Zemeckis, which is, Lord. I mean, he at this point, Robert Zemeckis has already established himself as a mainstay director. He'd already directed Back to the Future, so I mean, he's a made guy in Hollywood at this point. So.
Yes, yeah.
And this episode, like I said, is Yellow. It's set during World War I, and it's starring Kirk Douglas. And for all you cinephiles out there, you might be noticing some similarities. And you're right; it's because it's supposed to be kind of like an homage to the movie Paths of Glory.
Yeah,
where Kirk Douglas is leading an army troop that gets sent in for a suicide mission, and he orders them to retreat. And that one, they were basically sent in for a suicide mission, so they were guaranteed to die. And he's like, I'm not going to let that happen. And they call him a deserter, and they want him to be put in front of a firing squad.
Yeah. And I guess beside the point, probably the only time we'll be able to talk about Past the Glory. It's a great movie, great Stanley Kubrick movie, and Kirk Douglas is good in that. Kirk Douglas is good here. Actually, what's funny, do you know that Steven Spielberg was originally supposed to direct this one? Which makes complete sense.
I could see that, honestly. I mean,
Yeah,
that would honestly make perfect sense because
yeah,
he's a huge Kubrick head,
yeah,
and it would be like, oh, just he's going back to do Paths of Glory. He
yeah.
and said he stole AI, but
Yeah, that's what he decided on. uh yeah, and yeah, I mean, Kirk Douglas is really good in this, but I guess the main focus of this one is actually Kirk Douglas's real life son, Eric Douglas, is in this.
yeah, and he already gets labeled as a big coward, like on the battlefield, and Eric Douglas is really he's wanting to get out of the army, and he's like, I want to get out of here. This is nuts. Like I hate being in the army. And his dad's like, I'll give you a transfer if you do this one mission for me.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, it's kind of like another suicide mission almost. And
Yeah,
because he's tasked with going send him out to enemy territory, and Lance Hendrickson is one of the soldiers that Eric Douglas is leading,
mm-hmm.
and Eric Douglas has a whistle. He's supposed to sound the whistle when he sees German troops, but he doesn't. He wants to keep his own hide safe, so he lets them all get brutally murdered in front of his own eyes, and he lets it happen.
But Lance Hendrickson calls Eric there a coward himself.
Calls him yellow. He was like, yellow.
Yeah, and I really think this is definitely a high profile episode of the show because the set design, the amount of troops that they got, the battlefield, it's pretty stellar for the time. It's really surprising.
The sets are amazing. Like when they show them on the battlefield, I mean, you could tell me that this was made for a movie and I would believe it. I mean, it looks that good.
Yeah, it does. They definitely were like, okay, this is our high profile episode. And I think it was nominated for awards this specific episode.
Yeah. Dan Aykroyd too is randomly in it, and he doesn't do a whole lot, honestly. Yeah, but
he's fine.
He's there. But from what I could read, is that Tales from the Crypt was originally supposed to be like their final episode at one point, and that's why it looks like a big deal, is because they wanted to go out with a big grand finale type of deal. Gotcha. And it makes sense after you say that, because I was like, after I read that, like, oh, okay, that's why they spent so much money on here. And but the real meat of this story is after he gets labeled a deserter, Lance Hendrickson on his dying breath crawls all the way back to the barracks and tells them what happened. And he's Eric Douglas is ordered to be hit by a firing squad. And most of this movie is just a conversation between Kirk Douglas and his son.
Yeah. And I'll be very honest with you. I found it really depressing, because if you know the real life story of Eric Douglas, like, he struggled with drugs, and he died way younger than he should have. And that's with Kirk Douglas, his dad, taking him to rehab and stuff. So it's like, looking back on it, it almost feels like a real dialogue between like a father and a son. It's really sad in hindsight.
Yeah, it's very, very real moment. And it wouldn't surprise me if they were taking a lot of those real emotions and putting them in there type of thing. But it does, what I do like about this episode a lot is that, the other two, they're a lot funnier. Obviously, they're still entertaining in its own ways, but those ones, it's very clear cut that those guys are villains, and they're very much obsessed with this idea, and they kind of deserve what's coming to them. Now, Eric Douglas, did he do a horrible thing? Yes, but he was kind of put in a situation that he didn't want to be a part of. So it's kind of a lot more ambiguous. That is he a bad guy, or was he just put into this, or is he just a victim of being put into like his own circumstances?
Yeah, exactly. Because his family had a whole line of military men, and it didn't seem like he really wanted to do it. He didn't want to be sent off to die, and his men were dying. But his father finally decides to put him on for firing squad. But there's a lot of setup here. So I thought it was going to go one of two ways, personally. I was like, okay, either Kirk Douglas is setting him up to die, because Kirk Douglas is like, hey, I'm gonna do only planks, and we're gonna pretend that you die, and you're just gonna lay there and wait for us to leave, and then you're good to go. I almost thought that would actually happen, and he would have to lay next to the dead bodies of the people that he killed, pretty much, and they would be like a horror story there. But it does not go for that angle.
No, I kind of figured that it was going to go with the angle that it went with, but it's still a very great scene. I mean, they go to like this, like I said, and the leading up to that, like you said, he didn't want to be in the military at all. He wanted to, but he wanted to just please his father that bad, and he kept saying like, I just wanted to please you. You never gave me anything, and his dad, he just starts kind of coming around, because at first you kind of think his dad's like this real cold-hearted guy that would just kill his own son, and then like you said, he's building up this plan, saying, hey, we'll get you out of here. You can make up a new identity, and you can have your own life from that point on. And then at that point, Eric Douglas is like, okay, good. I can't. My dad did something nice for me for once, and he goes and prepares for the firing squad, and he's acting super confident, doesn't have any fear whatsoever, just looks totally just, yeah, let's do this. I'm ready for it type of thing. And turned out, it was his father did put in real bullets, and he ends up getting blown away by all those bullets. And they do say, he's like, well, he went out like a man.
Yeah, he's like, my son is not a coward. Yeah, just proving the point that he did not have a coward child.
Having a son with courage meant more than his own son's life.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good, very, very interesting ending. It was definitely a big change, because I watched the other two first, and then I went to this one. I did watch it in the order that we're talking in now.
Same here.
Yeah, so it was definitely a big change. And I mean, if this is how most dramatic Tales of the Crypts go, this is a really good dramatic episode. Like you said, it could be a movie.
I think this is definitely not the norm. It's very much a very dramatic, very silly, very goofy types. Like a lot of them. So there's some that deals with like Siamese twins or killer dummies or something like that. So very much like an adult version of like, Are You Afraid of the Dark or Goosebumps type of thing. And but like I said, this could have been it. You could have made a feature-length movie off of this one, and nobody would have batted an eye, or just said it was a remake of Paths of Glory, like a different interpretation of it, maybe. But again, both leads in here, Kirk Douglas and Eric Douglas, both give great performances in here. I mean, really, I didn't think there was a bad episode of the bunch of these three.
Yeah, honestly, picking a favorite is really hard for me. I guess to pick a favorite, I think it's Cutting Cards, and just from an enjoyment level, Yellow is a really good episode, but Cutting Cards is just so much fun.
Yeah, they each have their own strengths. But if I was going to watch one again, like I did, was Cutting Cards. So they're both very easy watches. Yellow is a little longer. That one's about 40 minutes, just under, but the other two are just over 20. So it's completely easy watches. From what I understand though, like as the series went on, the episodes kind of got progressively worse.
Really?
So I would say if you are thinking of venturing into Tales from the Crypt, then it's might want to stay within like the first like 3 to 4 seasons maybe. But
gotcha. How many seasons were there?
I believe 7, because it started in 1989 and then it ended in 96.
Gotcha. Wow. That's crazy. 93 episodes. That's a lot of TV.
So it's good. I mean, you can definitely tell that HBO spent a lot of the big. Well, okay. So if I had one gripe about the first 2 episodes, or maybe not so much Yellow because they spent a lot more money, because I think what didn't Hans Zimmer like do the score for? One of them.
Yeah, I think it was for Cutting Cards. No, it was the Joe Pesci one. He did the Joe Pesci one.
Yeah. I was gonna say that some of the scores sound a little too silly for my taste.
Yeah,
like it's very much like woo doo 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 doo, like the spooky music.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I put that in my notes for the Hans Zimmer score. I was like, oh, this one's kind of bad, and Hans Zimmer's really good. It was maybe just,
I guess,
I don't know.
Maybe he was taking some notes from Barbarian Queen. His friend James Horner was like, hey, check out my.
Let me pass this over to you. So,
although I think that was one of the good things about Barbarian Queen was the score, but
yeah, that's okay.
But I really wasn't a fan of the score of those because I'm just like it's a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
I would have liked a little more mood music.
Yeah, I guess if we're bringing up complaints, they the first two episodes used screen wipes like it was Star Wars, and I really think I don't love screen wipes, and like they were like star wipes, every kind of wipe to transition scenes. Very small minor thing, but I just thought it was silly.
Yeah, it's real negligible type. I mean, that's just both of those complaints are kind of nitpicky, I guess. If anything,
Yes,
I mean,
yeah.
it didn't deter my enjoyment of any of them. But if you're gonna, but yeah, we there are things you could definitely find out from each one. But
Yeah.
I definitely highly recommend those three. Would you go see these three episodes in the theater?
No, but like you said, no. But I do think
if yellow was feature length, I would definitely consider that.
Yeah, if it was feature length. But like I guess I wouldn't like pay to go see these, but I do think they are worth watching. They are really good and easily available at on YouTube, so you might as well.
Hey, all I can say is, especially with the new HBO streaming service Max coming in, you never know what's going to happen. So
yeah, who knows?
Maybe go gobble up all those episodes now while you can, or before they get copyright striked.
Exactly.
But I think that's it, Nathan. I'm going to hit power off on my TV.
All right. Can we finally go back to the drive-in?
No, let's talk about some other stuff. Let's talk about books next week.
Yeah. So next week we're talking about The Great Gatsby. Get ready. Yeah.
Catcher in the Rye and Great Gatsby. What a pair.
Oh boy, it's going to be a fun week. This week we're going back to the movies, and we're actually going back to an old standard. It's Bondzilla week again, and on Tuesday we're going to be talking about James Bond in Live and Let Die.
Terrific. Cannot wait. Well, if you enjoyed that episode or you have other TV shows you'd like us to talk about, what the heck, why not? Then please email us over at drivein-double-feature-podcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at DIDFpond. And once again, check out the Patreon at patreon.com/drivein-double-feature-podcast. But until next time.
Until next time.